This is a Tab Media special report on longevity in ministry. It's not often that a pastor and congregation get to stay together for multiple decades, much less half a century. But Gary Burton and the congregation of Pintlala Baptist Church, just south of Montgomery, Alabama, are celebrating that fact. Gary, thanks for joining us to talk about 50 years as pastor of the same church.
Well, it's been quite an honor, quite a thrill. It doesn't seem like 50 years, but it certainly has been. And I've enjoyed my relationship with the church. It's a great church, and I appreciate all that they have done for me, and appreciate your good service too, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, you've been kind through the years, and, I've been here in my post, some post at least. I've been part of the Alabama Baptist team for 26 years now. And so I've always known of you and followed your ministry and your pastorate there. Tell us a little bit about Pintlala. It's south of Montgomery, but tell us about that community.
Let's start with the name itself.
Okay.
Pintlala is a combination of two Creek Indian names, or two Creek Indian words, which means fish swamp. So I have served the Pintlala Baptist Church, or the Fish Swamp Baptist Church, for 50 years.
That is an interesting name.
And I spent a lot of time spelling it and pronouncing it, but it stuck with me.
Well, but that's, you could do a lot with that. I think there's going to be some blog posts and some sermon illustrations.
Yeah. Well, I what's happened over 50 years is that I have accrued a sense of place, and a lot of people don't have a sense of place. But this is a terrific home for me, and I love the people here. I think more people know me than I know them, but it's just been quite a privilege to serve for a length of time. And I think there's real value in a long tenured pastor that maybe you wouldn't get to experience otherwise. So I'm privileged and very grateful and humbled by it.
We are having trouble finding many others serving currently with 50 or more years. I think we've maybe run across two or three.
Right.
Tell us why it is so unique to stay in one place so long.
Well, it confirms one thing, at least in my opinion, it does, and that's the fact that you love the people you serve. Mm-hmm. I think that we have hammered out in our relationship and within the fellowship the necessity to love as Christ loves us. Mm-hmm. And this idea of agape love has to be experienced. You have to work at it. Sometimes you don't always live up to it. But that's the beauty of being in a church, is that we love each other and we're with each other, and we try to have conversations that can get rid of the things that are painful to us and not helpful. So I think there's a beautiful sense in being in one place for a long period of time. It's certainly not for everybody, but it's worked out for me, and I think the church is stronger for it. And I hope, I know I'm a stronger person because of it. And so that's where we are. I think I'll be analyzing this for quite some time, but it's been a real privilege, and it's humbled me in many ways.
Well, it sounds like it's much like any relationship, a family relationship, or anytime you're going to be in a long-term relationship. You mentioned having the conversations you need to have. Did you know to do that right away, or is that something you grew into as you matured?
Well, I hope I grew into it. I think if I've arrived at any level of maturity, and that's an ongoing challenge, that I appreciate this reaction with the church. It's just necessary for spiritual growth. I don't see how you can be a Christian without deep involvement in a local church, because you get to play off one another, you share humor with each other, and those hard times that are just difficult to get through, the church is there. And so it has a lot of dynamics, which I think bring enrichment to life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How, if you were counseling a young pastor, someone who's just starting out in ministry, how would you help them think about and prepare for building a similar foundational relationship as they start out?
Well, I think sometimes you have to work on the gift of a restrained speech. Sometimes relationships are helped by what you do not say. And obviously, if you contribute to a relationship, you want it to be helpful and not hurtful. And it's important to me to know that for myself, that I'm not hurting a situation, and hopefully I'm helping. But I think that's an important first start. To restrained speech is a good thing in most relationships, and then I think you have to affirm what's good in somebody. And saying it, practicing it, I think brings a lot of strength to Christian character. Just to affirm what's good in other people, and stop looking for the bad. It will reveal itself eventually.
Good point.
Yeah. So that's just a quick thought from my mind, but I do think relationships are just key to a good, strong church, and people need to have a sense of family or extended family in the life of the church, and we try to do that without oppressing people or being too involved with them. We want to be involved at the level of comfort that is there.
Do you feel like that also allows there to be a stronger sense of trust when the hard times do show up, or the moments that are potentially areas of conflict?
Yes. And as you and I know, trust is something you have to earn. And in some cases, it takes quite a while to earn it. But I do think we have to understand that two things are vital for trust. That's truth and time. And so over the lapse of time, you're known for being truthful. And I think the resultant effect is a great deal of trust.
Well, are there any negatives to being a pastor in one church for so many years?
Well, there could be. I could lie in bed in the morning and wonder what it might have been like somewhere else.
Right.
But I've been so fulfilled in this position that I just don't even think that way anymore. I'm thinking about how to move forward, and I would honestly say, Jennifer, I love every church member. It's just I'm sure there's degrees of the agape love. I don't know, but there certainly is no one that I would ignore or hate or dislike to the extent that I would not have a conversation with them. I just think it's better to love everyone and practice that love. It's universal, but it's got to be individual sometimes. It becomes a discipline, I think, in the way we respond to people. And I've always thought that agape love was more devotion than emotion. And sometimes that has to be the case in our relationships with people. We never stop being devoted.
Well, I mean, so you started as pastor January of 1972, and I can imagine you are now, you have been the pastor of multiple generations of the same families, right? I mean, you do have a devoted connection at that point.
Yes. And it's just, it's really amazing. When I have the opportunity to baptize, sometimes it's the grandchild of grandparents whom I first led to Christ, and that's a great thrill for me. And that's beautiful. I stopped at Chappie's restaurant a little earlier today and got lunch, brought it home. And the car hop that came out to my car, he was immediately looking at his computer. And I told him my name was Gary Burton, and it was in my name or my wife's name, Jerry. So he looked up and he said, "Are you Gary Burton?" This was today. And he said, "I used to come to your church years ago." It's just a great contact that I hadn't been unaware of, and glad it happened. So being known is at least in your vicinity, is an important asset, and you don't want to blow that, with something stupid, or you just want to keep that trust at a high level.
I love the thought, even talking about picking up lunch, being in one place for so long, you not only are known and trusted inside the church walls and with the congregation, but the community is going to know you better, and there's going to be that extension at
Right.
that point too.
Well, I love the community of Pintlala, and I've served in a lot of places beyond the church. Mm-hmm. So over the years, these relationships accumulate, and they're quite enjoyable. They just bring a depth and an enrichment to life that you would not have if you were stuck with just the church crowd all the time.
Right.
So. So it requires all these relationships, I think, to make life effective.
And, I was looking at your bio and reminding myself, you are involved in the medical community and you're involved in historical aspects too. So you've got interest beyond what you do through the church. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of having those extra extensions, like you said, so you're not just boxed into one area.
Well, it's important to me because it helps me build relationships beyond my immediate task. And those relationships are important as friendships. I'm also on the public library board, and I serve in Interfaith Montgomery. I think you can have friends beyond your own doctrinal beliefs. Yeah. And I'm a stronger Baptist because of my friends who have another faith, mm-hmm. and some who have no faith at all. I think that's fleshing out our prize as Baptists called religious liberty. Mm-hmm. And so it's just Montgomery's a great place to live. It's full of history, and Pintlala is full of history. And I think you need some history in your life to have a sense of place and to have some sense of stewardship in the place where you live. And it cannot be just a superficial community. There needs to be some depth to it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So touching all these bases is helpful to me. I've been more blessed than I've been a blessing, I think, because I have derived so much enrichment from these places of service.
I can imagine too, being able to settle in like that and build on these different ways you're participating, your boards of directors and different things that you're doing. That would take some pressure off of wondering, hey, where am I headed next? Or what should I be doing to be prepared for who might be watching? Because you're settled and you're just focused on developing where you are.
Right. I like the word settled as opposed to complacency. But it's true. I do think it gives you some anchorage in the place where you live, so you can be effective as you extend yourself.
Okay. Well. Okay. So thinking back. Okay. So you went to Samford University for your undergraduate, and you did some work with some churches during that time, and then you worked with some churches while you were in seminary at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. Right. You grew up in Burning Points Baptist Church in Birmingham and felt the call to ministry, or had the call to ministry there. Pintlala was your first full-time church. So this is where you've been. If you could go back now and talk to that Gary Burton in 1972, what are some things you would help him know?
Well, I hope I could be helpful. Obviously, I just wrote an article on advice to my 20-year-old self.
I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, I think I hope he would believe me. But at the age of 20, I'm not too sure that I would listen as well.
I don't think any of us did.
But having grown through the years, I think the important issues, you have to address those, and you have to be honest about where you stand in life sometimes. And so I just feel very blessed to live where I live, and getting to know people and understanding something about the sense of history. It's just it would be hard to have a sense of place without the idea of heritage and history being part of that formula, Mm-hmm. So I'm greatly privileged, and every day I'm more and more humbled by the thought of living here.
Mm. Tell us, let me think. Tell us one of your most fun moments that stood out, and then also one of the most difficult or the hardest moments that you can remember through the years.
Well, I have a lot of fun every day.
Right.
And our church several years ago purchased an old cemetery, and it was one of the original 4 churches of the Montgomery Baptist Association at that time. And the church no longer exists, the building, but the cemetery remains. And so we bought it with a quick claim deed. There were no vested interest in the cemetery. Got it cleaned up. It's rewarding today. But I have a lot of fun joking on that cemetery. And we've thought often about using it on Halloween night. But yeah, but we haven't really put this humor into practice yet. So so that's one thing that pops in my mind. And studying the history of the Baptist in that day really is gratifying. And I guess a serious crisis really brings home the seriousness of our relationship with people. Mm-hmm. And I think because I have some longevity here, there are people who call on me that are not technically members of the church I serve. This is a community experience. And many of my colleagues can certainly testify to that because they live through it every day. Just helping people get through crisis. You're never forgotten if you stand with people when they're in trouble or they need the Lord's help in an urgent way. So that's just what it's all about. I'd rather be doing some other things, of course, but if someone in my particular flock or elsewhere needs me, I'd like to be present.
Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? What would you say being present means?
I think it means 2 or 3 things. One is if they want you there, that's a compliment. And so you don't stay too long, and you don't wear out your welcome. My hospital visits are brief. When we used to visit the hospital before COVID, right. And we still get to do that some, but in death situations, especially in unexpected deaths or the unexpected deaths of a youth, mm-hmm. These kinds of things just drive you emotionally to the edge. But for the grace of God, I don't know that any of us could bear up under them, but it's an opportunity for the good news of the gospel and the message of hope. And so I hope I can help people and never hurt them. I don't want to say a dumb thing,
Right. Have you ever said a dumb thing?
I'm sure, but don't make me remember.
Understand.
Yeah.
What how do you maintain the energy and the joy and the excitement that you have and not get complacent, as you mentioned earlier? How do you keep that energy and that excitement?
Well, I think sometimes having a varied interest will help you get through those hard moments. Mm-hmm. But I think my love for the Bible and my being inspired by the gospel, those things are quite engaging for me. And the very idea that you have to plan what you're going to say on Sunday and Wednesday nights, this requires a lot of sweat equity on my part. And and some people can speak well on their feet without studying, but I'm not one of them. I need to give some advanced thought to what I'm going to say. And so that one discipline alone keeps me focused. And what I have found is that my other experiences in life kind of give fuel to what I preach once in a while, So I think it's the discipline of study and looking for ways to interpret the Bible that are legitimate, for instance, I've begun to train myself to look for implications in the Bible. Sometimes what God did not say is as important as what he has said. And so Holy Scripture just does it for me. And I think looking at it from different perspectives, I have to let it live with me some, to percolate some before I get to doing my actual writing. So that's a good view. And I love the church. And the church, as you know, we're on hard times. And I do think understanding the role in the church and the life of the believer is very important. And because they'll never understand it if you don't understand it. And I think when people hang in there with the church in good times and bad times, we come out on a good side together. We really love what the Lord has provided. And I think the first step is you just have to accept the imperfections within a church body. No church is perfect, and there are stumbling blocks along the way. You have to know where the minefields are. And you just have to take your time in analyzing a situation before you open your mouth and say something stupid, you know. Politics has taught me that.
Right.
You just need to be careful. Even though I have strong political convictions, I don't put them out front very often.
Right. Makes sense. Well, what would you share with a congregation who maybe is trying to learn how to love their pastor and have this kind of long-time relationship too? What are some tips that you could share with the congregations that are out there?
Well, I can certainly garner this from my own situation. But one gift the church has given to me is the church lets me do my own thinking.
Okay.
And that's important to me. Rather than handing me a template or say this is the way it's always been and it's never going to change, they don't do that. And I like to have a good case, a good rationale when I propose change, whether it's large or small. And I think it helps people feel that they're part of the process. So that's one good thing that I think a church could do for their pastor is let him do his own thinking and his own praying. Don't prescribe a certain way to preach or something he must do in order to be accepted by everyone. That might be the conversation of a close friend, but as far as church relationship is concerned, most guys have it together, and they're going to get around these hard situations pretty easily if you let them live out their own lives, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I read the article that we ran in the Alabama Baptist, or reread it right before we talked, and I
just read it. Yeah.
I know, right? I just saw I reminded myself of the story about the fishing event.
Yes.
The connection to one of our former presidents. So tell us that story. It was fun to see that.
It's a great story. I love to tell it. And I am without shame, I would call it a game changer for us. Yeah. Even though there have been many game changers along the way, that really flung wide the door. And Ray Scott, who was the head of Bassmasters, moved into our area. I officiated at a wedding. He seemed to like my sense of humor. So one day he just called me up and came to my office at 10 o'clock at night. And he said, I have a plan, and a lot of our pro fishermen that you have met, we want to build this sanctuary for you. And so what we're proposing is a series of 4 annual fishing tournaments on my lake. And they will pay $10,000 each to fish and to meet the president. So this went on for 4 years, once a year. And we raised over $1 million by doing that. And it was just such a blessing. For us, it was non-political. I mean, it was fun. And getting to know President George H.W. Bush was a delight. People asked me what that was like, and I said, well, it was just an honor to have him in our church and to speak to us. He would be a participant at the weigh-ins when all the fish were weighed. And all these professional fishermen really loved him too. I tell people, you ought to come inside our sanctuary and look at the front pew and see the plaque that reads, George H.W. Bush slept here. So I have fun with that. Yeah. And for a while we would exchange notes around Thanksgiving each year. I felt so indebted to him. He didn't have to do this. He even stopped at when they were on the way to the weekend, they stopped at our small local public school and thrilled those kids, Oh. And we have just tons of photographs of him holding these kids and talking to them. And it proved to be an experience that I would not have had otherwise. And to think that the President of the United States was standing in my humble office, I hope he lived to tell about it, but it would have been quite a challenge. We just had a lot of fun with each other. And I'll always be indebted to Ray. He helped us pull that off. And just preparation, working with the Secret Service and some prior investigative attempts just to clear the field, so to speak. Those thoughts will not be forgotten in a long time. But this was 1990, 89 through about 92 or 3. And, I get to talking about the new sanctuary. But the new sanctuary is 30 years old now. So, the tournament is old, but it lives very much in the history of our community and in our minds. It's something I never dreamed would happen to me, right. but and I don't think I embarrassed anybody. So,
that's always a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, what a fun memory and a fun story and experience overall. So,
well, we have a history book. It takes up a chapter or two, and we have memorabilia in the hallway and some photographs, that kind of thing. So it's just to keep the memory alive,
I love it. Well, also, I noticed that you have mentioned that you've started a community publication of some type there. So I'm very interested in that too. Tell me what's going on there.
Well, I don't know whether I sent Grace a link to those newspapers or not, but she might want to share those with you.
Yeah, I'll ask her and see if she has that.
Yeah, it's something we did not look for. I'm also a member of the board of Pacers. Okay. And Pacers is I would call it an advocacy group for small rural schools. Oh. And so Jack Shelton, our chair and president, he came up with the idea of concentrating on community newspapers. Mm-hmm. My concern, and I think you would share this, is I don't think we really know each other the way we ought to be knowing each other. Right. And this community newspaper is, we're low on religion and on politics. Mm-hmm. And so we try to highlight work that is being done and people who are part of the community. I do the interviewing and do the writing, and my wife does the design work.
I love it.
And it really has turned out to be something really incredible. We're about to publish our 4th edition, and the community loves it. And I think that's because we're reaching out to everybody who lives here, and trying to present the best side of Pintlala. I think it's been a helpful paper. And even in the country, Jennifer, people don't know each other. We might bump into each other at the gas station or something like that. But then if you live in the country, you might live on the back 40. Right. And you might have to go through 2 security gates just to get in to see somebody. And so there got to be other ways of bringing us out of our silos and getting to know one another. And I hope this community newspaper can accomplish some of that.
Community journalism is so important. So I'm so excited that you're doing that.
Well, I think at the local level, it takes on a little different flavor. Certainly, it's not hard journalism, but it has been fulfilling for me. And who would have thought at 73 I'd be publishing a community newspaper? So
I love the energy. I love the vision.
Well, that's right. And so a lot of times I can do what you're doing. I conducted an interview last week with someone on the phone, and a Black woman in the community, and she was delightful. I can't wait for people to read what I have written about her, And my wife really should take the credit for this, but she works hard at layout and design, and stays up late at night just to get things done, So
I love it.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we are.
What's the name of the newspaper?
It's called the Pintlala Ledger.
The Ledger. Okay, good.
Yes. And of course we get hard copies to distribute. The first article I did was on Pintlala's roadside businesses. Oh. And I interviewed not many of them, so I interviewed all the proprietors, and they got a kick of it. We put a ton of papers in their building so people can come in and get one for free. But we also have a link to the internet because we think the internet will help us grow some beyond our area,
I definitely understand that. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, you do a remarkable job because you've adapted yourself to a younger culture and made it relevant to an older culture. And I think that's quite a challenge.
It definitely is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Sure. All right. Well, we will be celebrating your 50th anniversary at Pintlala Baptist Church coming up Sunday, January the 9th. So that's just a couple of days away now.
And it's at 10:45.
At 10:45. All right. So it's going to be a fun day. So I'm excited about that for you. All right. Well, Gary, thank you. Thanks for sharing some of your story.
Well, thank you for being a part of our lives. You have enriched the entire Baptist family in a lot of ways. I'm sure you get letters you don't want to get, but I can't imagine anybody who reads that paper thoughtfully would ever get on a critical side. But you've just done a marvelous job, and I think all your predecessors would be proud.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sure. You're very kind.
Yeah. Well, keep our anniversary in mind, and it'll be a big day. Then we'll move on to the routine things that make life matter sometimes, And so I'm a little nervous about it because I don't know what's happening. And
you're probably not in control this Sunday, right?
I'm not. And but I've intentionally distanced myself because I just can't do that. Yeah. But it'll be a big day for us, and we're looking forward to the joy of it.
Good. Well, I look forward to seeing you. I will be there. So.
Oh, great. All right. Well,
thank you again.
Thank you for your good job.